Welcome everybody to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Ares Foundation for Financial Education. And tonight we're doing a fun one. It's a takeoff on an old movie that I've been trying to rack Craig's brain about, but obviously he's way too young. The movie was called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. And there's a little bit in there where they take over town hall or something in this movie, and it says, everybody to get from street, in a very, very Hollywoodized Russian accent. But so for our purposes, we're doing The Recession is Coming, and maybe we should get away from the street as in Wall Street, right? Yeah. As far as that is concerned. Next slide, please.
You could have done the redcoats, you know.
The redcoats, right? No. So just know we're gonna do that. This is being recorded, so just know it is recorded. Go ahead, next one. So this is just real quick for us, a little introduction to your presenters for this evening. My name is Tom Alessi. I'm the president of the Ares Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services for over 23 years now, going into my 24th year. I'm a financial advisor. I am an investment advisor, which means I act as a fiduciary whenever giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring my vice president, Craig. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Ares Foundation. I've been in financial services a little over 18 years now, and I specialize in working with families to help them get a handle on their money and have a better relationship with their money.
Thank you. Craig will be chiming in as we go along. So we told you that next slide that the presentation tonight is brought to you by the Ares Foundation for Financial Education. The mission behind Ares is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money, because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like every other personal relationship that you might have, there are behaviors and triggers and things that can cause us to act irrationally sometimes when it comes to dealing with our finances. All Craig, myself, the rest of the Ares team tries to do is help everyone sort of take that emotion out of the equation. You can visit our website. It's www.aresfoundation.org. And you can just check out some of the stuff that we have. We got a YouTube channel. You can check out some of our videos. We're recording some of this on New TV. You can check out New TV for the channel that we have there. Next slide, just real quick. I'm not going to go through a lot of the disclosures here with you. We're a nonprofit. It's meant to be educational, meant to be informational. All we ask is that if you're going to share any of this information, you do so in an educational manner. Craig, myself, and the rest of the Ares team always recommends that if you ever have any questions, whether they be legal, tax, or financial, that you seek out the help of a professional. Next slide. That brings us to the fun part of this evening. We call this Think with a Drink. And the reason we call this Think with a Drink is that we want it to be more casual, more relaxed, and we can't think of a better way to do that than as if we're having something cold to sip on and our audience is enjoying as well. Tonight we are drinking, this is Yuengling Light. For those who don't know Yuengling, this is the oldest ongoing brewery in the United States of America.
Wow.
This light is a recipe that they brought back in 1987, so it's been around for a little while, and it's a crisp, light, refreshing lager that doesn't have a lot of the calories. Skål.
Skål.
Next slide. All right, so the agenda that we're going to go through is, what is a recession? Why should you care about a recession? What can you do to prepare should we be headed towards a recession? And where do we go from here in the great grand scheme of everything? So next slide, when we talk about recession, really the bottom line with a recession is a recession technically, from a technical analysis standpoint, is the 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, gross domestic product, right? So if that's gone down 2 quarters in a row, technically, from an analysis standpoint, we are in recession.
Right.
But there's not really, there's an organization out there that sort of decides for us that
arbitrarily that we're there. Yes. The sky is falling.
Yes. The
Chicken Little organization.
So
yes.
It's actually an organization that oversees this. I mean, the most technical part is that we've run into this, but they can decide at any time that, like, oh, by the way, we're in a recession, that's what's happening. So just understand that recession reflects more on GDP, on the national economy, than it does anything else when you're hearing a lot of this, because right now that's what's going on. You're hearing a lot of this being bandied around and a lot of this talk of, hey, the U.S. economy is headed towards recession. Well, what is that really going to impact and what is that going to do, right? So that's what we want to talk a little bit about. Next slide. So why should you worry? Well, ultimately, when we start talking about recession, that's when we start talking about things becoming worse, right? Everything gets tighter.
Right. People start to draw back on what they're spending. Things are more expensive. They're maybe not making as much money. Supply chain issues, all those types of things.
Right. And so what you wind up with is, that tightening going on, and that can cause further damage, further downturn towards the economy, i.e., job loss, restricted in terms of spending and what's happening. So, layoffs usually go hand in hand with a recession. It can happen. Don't necessarily see that right now in the forecast as far as the U.S. economy is concerned, but it is one of the reasons to be, well, wait a minute, this R word is kicking around here, and what am I getting,
Well, I think, the economy in the last few years has been anything but typical, right? A lot of the things that we thought were regular predictors of what was going to happen next haven't always happened. Right, inverse rates of return on bonds, all these other things we thought were going to okay, now it's going to be a next tipping point. Right. So I think even when you're throwing around the word recession right now, it's in an atypical environment. I mean, we have the record unemployment right now. You have people across all occupations getting raises right now because they're trying to retain employees, and spending is still up. So even though inflation is up. So
yeah, I mean, some of that can be offset with the cost of everything, right? So, and what's happening there. And that is one of the factors that we're going to look at in terms of go through. But next slide, in terms of dealing with, so, I mean, the idea here, and again, when we talk about this with where the U.S. economy is right now, yes, I understand the markets, the great grand scheme of everything, are in bear territory, at least the S&P 500 is, which just means that they're down more than 20% from their 52-week high. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, those two indexes are in bear territory. Doesn't necessarily automatically trigger a recession,
right?
But it is one of those indicators that's like, something's bad maybe on the horizon. Most of the indicators are talking about it being in 2023, not necessarily in this year, because as Craig had just mentioned, there's still some positive stuff going on right now, which is saying that maybe not everything isn't as bad as it's being made out to be today, versus, but some of this stuff is going to come to a head.
Right.
It's going to come to fruition, and the question is whether or not the Federal Reserve Bank is going to be able to maneuver in such a way that fasten your seatbelt. We don't crash land in all of this.
We're just worried about an overcorrection by the Fed, right?
And that is one of the things, what they talk about being a soft landing for the Fed. That means we're bringing everything in. We're reeling back inflation to a reasonable number. Right now, we're spiking in the high 8s, which are historic highs for inflation. And we're trying to get that under control. By doing that, the Fed is raising interest rates at a rapid number and a rapid rise, and that possibly can have, as Craig just alluded to, that inverse effect, right? Can whipsaw the whole economy, and we can be in a situation to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? This may not necessarily be the best thing.
Well, part of the problem too is the federal government only has so many different levers they can pull to try to either slow growth or curb inflation, right? And that's only one of the only trigger levers they have to pull.
Correct.
Right, so they either increase the Fed rate or decrease the Fed rate depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, and what you're saying is how do you do that in the right way to correct for what's going on in the economy?
Right, and that's their biggest hurdle right now, because they've got to pump the brakes. They're trying to pump the brakes, but that not necessarily, doing it too hard and too fast like anything else is going to cause the vehicle to start spinning out of control, regardless of how much you put the brakes on. So it's something to watch as we go forward here. Next slide with us. So where do we go from here, right? So next slide on that. So this is this is a little bit of where what happens and where we go, and some of the things. So this is more on Craig. Craig is more on the good vibe type of thing, and so why don't you tell us why we should not be as worried going forward?
Spy versus spy. I'm the white spy. Well, I think we mentioned it a little bit already about some of the factors that I'm considering. Number one, unemployment rates at a record low. That's fantastic. Number two, talking to multiple different organizations and people across the spectrum, even in my own field, who are they're getting raises. Now, I'm not saying everybody's getting raises. If you're making minimum wage, it's still difficult. But for most of middle America, they're trying to retain people. They can't get the help. That's why they have record unemployment. So I'm seeing real wages starting to increase over some of the inflation numbers, which to me is a nice indicator. Now, will that cause increased spending, keep spending on pace? I don't know, but it's a factor you don't usually see running into a recession. Right. Which is, like I said, another reason to have a little hope that maybe by the end of the year they will peter out. The other thing we have going on is you have a war, you have supply line issues, and the other thing is we're not rowing this boat alone. The entire world is in the same boat we're in. China's just coming out of their COVID, and they're starting to ramp up their production, so they're using a lot of oil. So that's pushing gas rates. So I just think you got to take the whole thing in stride, and and the United States is still better positioned than most other countries when it comes to this recession and what's going on in the economy.
Right, and I know we've talked about it in the past. You mentioned about the low unemployment rate. That there's still a very, very low number out there as far as that's concerned. One of the things we talk about with this, and I'm chiming in here with him on the good vibe thing. One of the things with raising interest rates is that for those who use those fixed accounts, i.e. bank and other type of interest-bearing accounts, those are all being raised.
Right.
So the interest on those are being raised. The idea of raising those interest rates, it does the reverse, obviously, on lending, because it makes lending much harder, much higher. But that's sort of trying to curtail the whole out-of-control housing market that's going on.
To me, recession is really like, it's almost like a natural occurrence. It's got to happen to kind of cull the herd a little bit, if you will. Okay. Right? If you look at, like you just talked about, interest rates. If you were trying to put money in the bank right now, you're not putting it in the savings because you can't get any interest. You're getting you're getting a slap in the face for your trouble. But for people who go back to, say, the 70s or 80s, when you're getting 5 or 6 in a fixed account and a savings account in a bank, now you're starting to see some of those interest rates come back. Annuitization rates are coming back. The fixed instruments that people weren't going into, which is why the stock market kept riding up as it was, because there's nowhere else to go, right? So some of this is just a natural correction of the market, and we've been waiting for this. It's been a 7-year run-up, right? So we know this was going to happen. It's not like, we know the sun's going to set tonight, right? We know we were going to have a correction. Now we've had it. Now the issue is, what do you do with it, right?
So next slide, because now I'm just going to rain on that parade.
Yay!
Because this is all the doom and gloom, right? So for those in the audience who are old enough to know, this is a character out of an old TV cartoon series called Gulliver's Travels. That character's name is Glum. Glum's tagline was, "We're all doomed," basically. We're all doomed, right? Everything was always just doom and gloom, right? So here's the thing, and here's the problem with all of that Craig just went through. The fact that the Federal Reserve Bank may not necessarily have a handle on what it is they're doing. They're raising interest rates at a very, very rapid rate right now, 3/4 of a point in the last time, possibly looking at the possibility of raising it again in July, which is unheard of for the Fed. They usually wait for the open market meetings. The next one would be in September. And so that may trigger the opposite effect happening, which is, one, if it didn't curb it, they're going to continue to raise interest rates. And what you can end up doing is whipsawing the economy to where you bring it all to a grinding halt. And if you do that, then we'll really wind up in a situation like we had in the 70s, which is known as stagflation, because nothing is happening. You have ground the economy to a complete halt. We'll see if the Fed can actually bring this in, like they talked about, in a soft landing.
What are you talking about? The government always knows what it's doing.
It always knows what it's doing, absolutely. The other is that low unemployment number. unemployment only looks at 2 years, right? So if you've been out of work since the pandemic started, you're not on the count anymore. You're just off in space. They don't count you as far as that official number for unemployment reasoning. And yes, while interest-bearing things are getting better, i.e. savings accounts, money markets, CDs, those type of things, you still have a market that is down 20% and no real clear indication today where that's going. And the problem is that the markets could continue to twist and turn and possibly run down another, anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12% at this point. So you could see more of a runoff, more of a decline happening in the markets before any of this stuff gets to be.
Oh, I think you will. I think you will.
Yeah, we're just Mr. Positive. How'd you get to Mr. Doom and Gloom?
Well, because you're always going to have a little bit more dip before you're in a positive. But I don't see that as a negative. I see it as everything, whether the market's up or whether the market's down, is an opportunity.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I get
So
that.
if the market's down, what do you want to do right now?
Right, you want to buy. I mean,
Right.
that's that's the idea with that. And one of the things there with it is, and understand that really for where we are today, which is 2022, the idea of a recession coming into play this year is probably very unlikely. Mm-hmm. That more than likely, if it does happen, it's going to happen as an effect of all the things we were just talking about. The Fed, the interest rates, the supply chain issues, the war, oil shortage, everything going on, and come to a head next year, 2023. That's the reality for what is going on right now and more than likely is going to happen. Can't say it for sure because, again, as Greg is sort of saying, it's like Bill Belichick, right? we believe in Bill. This is I believe in the Fed, right? So the Fed is going to bring us home and going to do everything right, and we're going to get there. Next slide, please. All right, so how do you prepare, right? So the idea here is, all right, we're in 2022, but this thing is, possibly kick in 2023 sometime, whether it's the first quarter or the second quarter of next year, sometime during 2023, we kick into a recession, right? What can you do today? How can you prepare or be ready should that happen within the next 12 months? Because that's what we're looking at, really, for reality.
Right, and this is whether you're taking the bear perspective, which is Tom's, or the bull perspective, which is mine, right? Preparation is always the key.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you want to be doing.
Next slide. So the steps that you can take. So one of the first things that you can do, right, is to save money now. Now, I know that sounds pretty, what is that, Captain Obvious, right?
Yes, Captain Obvious. I love those commercials.
So we understand that saying that does seem very, very obvious, right, to save money now. But the idea is to start allocating funds into, say, an emergency reserve, say, into some sort of banking savings program, so that you're building up should that recession happen and those layoffs and downturn occur for that purpose.
Well, Americans are notoriously bad at saving, right?
Yeah.
We're good at paying our bills. We're just not very good at saving money for ourselves. And now, coming out of COVID, you have a perfect excuse to say, well, I needed my savings and now they're depleted, right? But having savings put aside, making yourself a bill is a major priority, especially when we're giving you this 6 to 8 month window of, hey, get ahead of this thing.
Right, get ahead of it, right? So then the other one there is maybe look at tightening those spending habits, right? So it's not so much, hey, you got to cut everything out, but literally look at maybe there are some things I can do to, shave some of my current spending so that if it does happen, I do wind up and I've run into this downturn, that I'm prepared for it and I'm not worried about it. Pay off debts, again, there's another, walking into Captain Obvious, but taking care of debts, this is a big deal, right? So everybody should have some sort of a spend down, spend against, pay down plan if you currently have outstanding debts. Regardless of who you are, it doesn't matter how much you have, doesn't matter how much you own, just there should always be that plan for getting rid of debt.
Right. If you're going through a tight marketplace, it's always easier to tighten your belt a little bit if you don't have people sitting there with their hand out, right? Because it's just about you and what you have to do. if you have creditors chasing you, it just adds to the stress level if you do have to go through a down market or some kind of unemployment or something along those lines.
And so then the other one, as Craig had alluded to and had mentioned, which is, right, invest. So right now, as we talked about, the entire S&P 500, the index itself, is down 20%. It's like walking into your favorite store and everything is 20% off. I think if everything was 20% off, you might find something that you would like to purchase or buy in that situation. So in this case, it's, you know, if there's money sitting on the sideline, now may be a good time to start looking at, hey, look, I can take advantage of this, start putting it away. Maybe I'm going to try to build up some of that extra cash for later in 2023 or down the line in terms of taking advantage of that. We hate to use the B word, budget. But in this case, you know, the idea isn't so much creating a budget as it is creating or understanding where and how you spend your money. Right. Because that's more important than anything else. Having a handle on how and where and why, most importantly, right?
Absolutely.
Why do you spend your money? That's going to take you through any ups and downswings and downturns that occur. Go ahead. I thought you were going to say something. Never mind.
Wasn't. The only thing I was going to say, though, and when it comes to the investment piece, is I want people to be uber cautious when it comes to, you know, everything is down, everything's on sale, including cryptocurrencies. And I think they're a little bit of an exception to that rule. I think there's a lot going on that if everything was based on cryptocurrency, we'd be looking at a depression right now, not a recession.
Correct.
And that gives you a little bit of pause as to whether you want to throw into that. I don't think cryptocurrencies are going away, but I do think they will morph and change. They won't be what they are now. So just be cautious on all those ads you see, especially when it comes to investing in crypto in your retirement accounts.
And check out our YouTube channel on Crypto is Burning.
Crypto is burning, yes.
Yes, so that will go into a lot of that you know, what's going on in the cryptocurrency world. So you can go to our YouTube channel and look at it. It's called Crypto is Burning.
It's the only area I'm usually a bear on, crypto, right.
The last one on there is watch your health, right? So one of the biggest things, because financial issues, and one of the reasons that we put the Aries Foundation together, is that money causes stress. It is one of the biggest concerns, one of the biggest stress factors in most adults' lives, and it's one of those things that if money becomes a problem, that stress kicks in, that we find our health starts to deteriorate as well. So sort of get in front of it, try to keep yourself healthier now, be healthier, whether that's be more active, eat better, whatever the case may be, but try to be healthy as you go into it, because next year, who knows where we're going to be.
Absolutely.
Next slide. So a little bit about what Craig and I try to do with everybody is we try to help them have a clear understanding of what we call the road ahead, right? And the road ahead for everybody is different. We're all on a similar path, but we're taking a different journey to get along that path. Some people have speed bumps or road bumps that they run into. Others have potholes. Others have big speed bumps and big signs that block them from going where they want to go.
Depends on where my GPS sends me.
Exactly. That's the other side of it. You know, some are using GPS, some aren't, right? But what we try to do is help everybody get a better understand where they're trying to get to, how to navigate on that path, how to navigate on that road, and try to get there. And one of the ways we do that, next slide, is what we call the roadmap to financial awesomeness. Everybody's path is different, but what we're trying to do is help you find the journey to get there. And this is it's a mapping, it's a visual tool, and it really takes into consideration all the things that you're thinking about, all that you're trying to do, what stuff that you have, and how you're going to get wherever it is you're trying to get to.
It's a wicked awesome tool.
Wicked awesome. Whatever that financial final place is that you want to get to, I mean, ultimately, that's the idea behind the roadmap. You can click on that because there's an animation that comes up with it that pops up on the so it's just know that you can always reach out to Aries. You can reach out at any time to ask us about it. Again, we'll give you the contact information at the end. But we try to do this with everybody because we really believe this is one way to help everybody have a better understanding, a better handle, and a better overall grasp on where their financial life is. And when you can see it just laid out for you in that visual tool, it becomes very, very productive, very, very powerful in terms of using
Right.
it.
Part of the issue of dealing with money is it's so abstract. It's really hard to get a concept in your head of where everything is and what you should be dealing with. It just seems so complex, it seems out of hand. But if we can put it in a visual perspective where here's everything on one page and start talking about, okay, here's some things that are going right, here's some things we need to fill in, it started to make it a lot easier to understand how to hit some of those targets.
Right. Next slide. So this is Craig and I in our more formal attire. Yes, for everybody in the audience, those are TB12 jerseys. They are not Brady jerseys. They are custom to us. He did, abandon us and go to Tampa Bay. We kept the jerseys because he's the greatest of all time.
So you bad-mouthing the GOAT? My God.
I was not bad-mouthing the GOAT. I was saying the reason we kept the jerseys. He retired, which then put us in full panic mode in terms of what we were going to do for all of 38 days. And then he came back. So we have one more season. We're keeping the jerseys for one more year. After this season, we'll figure it out from there. It's just saw Gronk re-retired. So there you go.
The 10s are coming. The 10s are coming. Don't worry.
Yeah, the 10s are coming, right? That's the idea with that. So we're not sure, but that's us in our more formal attire. Next slide. And so as we said, if you have any questions, if any of this stuff, is bothering you, you have any concerns about money, about finances, you find yourself in debt, you need some help, you need some conversation, feel free to reach out to us. That's why we're here. That's why we put Aries together. You can reach us at www.ariesfoundation.org, or you can visit, send us an email. It's info@ariesfoundation.org. But you can always check out, we've got a link to the YouTube channel that you can go to and check out any of the titles. If you happen to be on New TV, we've got a channel here on New TV. You can check out New TV. But other than that, I'm going to say, skål, thanks, and have a great night.